TV's royal commentator, Richard Berthelsen. Richard, good morning. Nice to see you.
You too.
Can we first begin by talking about what we're seeing live? Maybe we can pop up the pictures again. Where are the First Lady and the President right now? Behind the castle?
They are, yes, in what probably not an area the public are used to seeing at Windsor. Looks like the west front of the castle. And what they're watching here is what's called beating retreat by the household division. And this is, I would say, an unusual inclusion into this particular state visit. It usually actually happens at the end of the day. In other words, as the sun is going down and you see the president and Mrs. Trump with their majesties, the king and queen, on the dais there watching the retreat. So it's a military display of performance and showmanship to some extent by the British military and also their marching skill. And I also understand at this particular event they're meant to have a fly past as well, which is also another unusual inclusion in a state visit of this kind.
Yeah, and you say we usually see it when the sun's going down. Sadly, there has been no sun in Windsor today, and it looks like it's a little windy too.
Yes. Yeah, and I think this has been advanced. This would normally probably be taking place around the time the state dinner this evening has started. So obviously they can't be in two places at one time, so they've moved this up a little bit. We know that the president is extremely impressed by military spectacle. He tried to have a big parade, as many people will recall, earlier this year in Washington, which had different degrees of success in terms of how you want to look at it. He was also very impressed by the French military display on Bastille Day. And so the British, I think, are putting out every single thing they possibly can that they have in the way of military spectacle, which is not an inconsiderable amount, given their history and their customs and tradition. And they're putting it out for the president on this occasion. Again, this has very little public impact aside from what people can see on the media, because the public is nowhere near any of this going on.
Nowhere near. So, Richard, how would you compare this visit to the first visit when President Trump was hosted by the Queen?
I think they put out a lot more military assets into this visit than they did the previous visit by the president, the previous state visit. That visit was also hosted at Buckingham Palace. This is at Windsor. It's not unusual that state visits would be hosted at Windsor. The French president was just hosted at Windsor. Buckingham Palace was not even an option for this visit because it's currently still undergoing a massive renovation and restoration project, which will go on for another 2 years. So that was not an option. And of course, the other problem with Buckingham Palace is it's in the center of a very busy city, and it creates an enormous disruption with the president driving around in his vehicle and all the rest of it. So, and of course, the public is a lot closer to the palace. The Windsor has a lot more open space, a lot more private areas, such as the one that they're at right now. And I think what's going on here, you see, is the king and the president are meeting with military officials, probably drawn from a nearby American military base, as well as from the British Armed Forces. So that's a very secure environment for the president to be out in public, because we know there are varying points of view in the United Kingdom about this visit and about President Trump.
Indeed, and Westminster less of a security risk. So let's talk about what comes next. As you point out quite rightly, there has been a lot of pomp and pageantry. There's also a very strong political undertone to this visit, Richard.
Yeah, there is. I mean, obviously, it was an extraordinary thing for the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Sir Keir Starmer, to recommend to the King inviting the president so early in his second term and for a second time. Of course, the president has had a second term, which was, separated by the 4 years of the Biden administration. It has happened before. Hasn't happened in recent times, and certainly not with an elected president. It hasn't happened probably since the 1920s with the president of France. So that was very unusual. And I think given the polarized view about the Trump administration in some circles, even within the United Kingdom. I mean, I think it also was a very, very unusual decision. But obviously, the British have made the calculation, that is, the British government has made the calculation that the president is very impressed by state visits. He wanted a state visit. He's very enamored with the royal family. He knows that the military spectacle in Britain is second to none. He wants to be associated with that. So all of these things have happened. Now, this is a ceremonial day with the arrival ceremony earlier on, with this meeting retreat, which is a very unusual ceremony, as I say, to take place during a state visit at all. The state dinner, a normal part of a statecraft. Of course, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, will be at that dinner. There will be light conversation of a social nature on the fringes of that, maybe a little bit political. And then tomorrow, the president goes on to Sir Keir Starmer's country residence called Chequers, and that will then become even, obviously, a much more political discussion.
And do you expect, Richard, that some sort of trade deal would be announced while Trump is there with Starmer?
Well, I think there will be, as they say, announceables. What those will be are really open to some speculation. There was a bit of a framework for a trade deal already announced with the British. It was, very scanty on details when that was announced. It was just a couple of pages long. There's a lot more that probably has to be filled in those details. Whether that will be done on this particular visit remains to be seen. There are other things that could be announced around support for the armed forces, or joint training, or joint exercises. There's issues that could be discussed and announced around NATO, even around the Ukraine situation, those elements. And of course, the Americans are looking for a 250th anniversary next year. Since they declared independence from the United Kingdom. So that may be discussed as well, and there's a possibility that royal personages may be invited to participate in that, as Queen Elizabeth did in 1976 for the 200th. So there's all these kinds of things. I mean, trade obviously is a big preoccupation, but frankly, it's the other issues are also huge preoccupations for the British. The international security situation, NATO, defense spending, the situation in the Middle East, the situation in Ukraine. We could go on.
We could go on. A lot of sticky subjects there for sure. We have lost our live feed, so no more live pictures for now. Richard Berthelsen, always great to have you with us. CTV's royal commentator, Richard Berthelsen.